Hi, this is Nick. Welcome to ISG, where we talk all things real estate in the Czech Republic. Today, we're going to look at the first 6 months of 2026 and see what's been happening in the market. Apartment prices have risen in Prague by around 2.2% for the first half of 2026. This is a very similar rate to we were seeing last year, but there has been a little bit of a slowdown in the last couple of months where there have been quite small increments. The highest growth we've seen across the major cities in the Czech Republic in the last 6 months has been in Ústí nad Labem, where it's been around a 15% rise. Now, Ústí had been left behind from other places, especially as Ostrava, which is normally another low-cost city, had experienced such rapid growth in the last year or two. So Ústí is now starting to catch up, which is just a normal kind of elastic effect of the market moving up. It was being left behind, so investors are starting to go in there and speculating that prices will go up. And what's interesting in Prague is that the average cost of a property has actually decreased. So although the average price per square meter has increased, the average price has decreased. It was around 11.7 million at the beginning of the year and is down to around 11.4 million during that time. And what's interesting about this is you've got the price per square meter going up and you've got the average cost of a property going down. So what's actually telling you is that the average size of property is getting smaller as well. And in fact, sizes of properties have decreased by 5% in the first 6 months. So customers are really getting squeezed here. So they're clearly still demand to try and get onto the property ladder, but people are buying smaller and smaller apartments as their money goes slightly less. And we can see this kind of demand thing in looking at S-reality statistics as well, because the average 40 square meter apartment takes just over 2 months to sell, whereas larger apartments may take more than 4 months to sell if you look at something that's over 100 square meters. So the buyers are very densely populated in the low size bracket, and as prices go up, they're able to get just smaller and smaller properties. And it's interesting that we're starting to see that happen more and more. And it also means on the flip side, there seems to be a lot of opportunity looking at sizes of properties that are 100 square meters or more, which are actually getting much, much cheaper. In fact, to back this up, statistics from S-reality show that prices of 100 square meter apartments have actually reduced by 3% over the last 6 months, whereas prices of small properties around 40 square meters have increased by 4% over the same period. And we're starting to see this diversion here. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with how far people are willing to go per square meter for small apartments. Now that data was for all of Prague, but if we look at Prague 1, we can see something quite interesting happening, and that is people are starting to buy bigger properties. The average size of apartments sold in the first half of 2026 was 9.7% bigger. The average properties bought and sold there is 102 square meters, which is more than 20% bigger than the next biggest area in Prague. So it shows that the wealthy are still buying in decent numbers. And maybe again, we are seeing some discounts on those larger properties and they're starting to snap them up. Rents in Prague also grew by around 3.3% for the first half of 2026, and that finally breaks the 450 crowns per meter squared per month barrier. This is a barrier that we'd seen hit and come back, and now we've seen it push right through. And I think now it's where, until we get to around 500 crowns per square meter per month, there's probably not much stopping this. Across the country, we saw a similar rise in the first 6 months, around 4%. But in Brno, we've seen 15% rise in the first 6 months. And I think, again, we developed quite a large difference between Prague and Brno is just starting to catch up at speed. So right now, the average rent in Prague is around 30,800 plus utilities, which is still 40% higher than Brno, despite their large increases in the last 6 months. From a buy-to-let perspective, Ústí nad Labem is the clear winner with rental yields well over 5%, just on ordinary statistics. And in Prague, it's quite low, the worst at around 3.5%. Interest rates have risen to around 5.3% to 4.9% at the beginning of the year, We were expecting rates to rise, and they had risen just a little bit based on banking costs, but after the Czech National Bank's decision to increase rates by 0.25%, we have seen that being the main part. So of 0.4% is roughly 0.25 from the bank and 0.15 from the cost. Looking this in terms of the repayment, that makes repayments for the average mortgage around 4% higher than they were. It's not huge, but everything is just chipping away at people's buying power, especially as wages are not really moving at the same speed as the real estate market. It's worth pointing out when we talk about wages that it now takes on average 18 net salaries, annual net salaries, to buy the average property in Prague. Now that's around nine household incomes if you double it, but it's still a substantial number. Even on gross salaries, it's 14 gross salaries to buy an apartment, which still makes Prague one of the most expensive cities in all of Europe. Thanks very much for watching, and see you again soon.